We're not talking about a Return of the King. We're not talking about a Return of the Jedi. We're talking about a Return of the GOAT. Let's go.
Be more than human.
Hello and welcome to the channel. I'm J.R. Carroll, the author of the More Than Human novels, and today we are going to talk about the Cinder Spires series and the new release, Olympian Affair. Now, I am, if you've watched the channel for any length of time, you know I am a huge Jim Butcher fan, a huge Dresden Files fan. I've probably went through the Dresden Files like 6 times. I have every book reviewed on the channel, so if you want to check those out, you can check those out. But it is embarrassing for me to say that up until like last week, a week and a half ago, I had never read the Cinder Spires book, and I knew that his second book was coming out, and I was like, you know what? This is the time. This is the time. Let's jump into it.
Hell yes.
So I'm kind of gonna, we'll talk about what this world is about, and then I'll talk a little bit about how I felt about the second book, since that's what most of you are probably here for. Now, coming into this, only thing I knew is that it was kind of a steampunky, type of world. But it is pretty, it is a pretty interesting world. And I actually came into this and I was like, you know what? There's no way he's as good at writing, steampunk fantasy as he is writing the Dresden Files and the urban fantasy. And I couldn't have been more wrong. I mean, Jim Butcher, we are not worthy. Yeah, I mean, he's the GOAT.
That's why he's the GOAT! The GOAT!
He is the best. I mean, how can you be so good, and have this long series, and then you can just transition over to a whole different genre and be as great as you are? And here's one thing I will say. I will fight you. If anybody thinks that anybody, after the especially after the second book, after the Olympian Affair, nobody writes animals better than Jim Butcher. I mean, I may say that like Oi from the Dark Tower still might be the #1 animal, maybe, but as a whole, you cannot miss with Jim Butcher when it comes to writing animals. Now, this seems, now if for some reason you're here and you haven't read their first book, the Cinder Spires, people live in like these, at least 10 of these spires that are attached to the ground, but they're up in the sky around presumably Earth, and the builders built them thousands of years ago. Nobody really knows who the builders really are at this point. We just know that it's been at least thousands of years that people have lived in these spires, and the spires are almost like countries. They speak their different languages. They have their own cultures. There are different ways of doing things. They're different, and through this world is airships. There's all kinds of ships, and different spires have different ways of doing ships. Some like to be faster. Some like to be bigger. Some like to have more offensive capabilities. Others have defensive capabilities. And of course, this being steampunk, stuff is ran off of like, a lot of copper, bronze, and these crystals that they use to power a lot of things. The crystals, power the electricity, and such things. And in this world, wood is very expensive. So if you have wood, you are like high class. Which, as we will kind of transition now to the Olympian Affair, so we're still following our main characters, like Raoul the cat, which is Bridget's. He might say that Bridget is his pet, but we're also following Grim, Gwen, you know, and in this book, we kind of have, you know, your traditional split up.
Bitch, that's a terrible idea.
Part way through, you know, one group goes one way, one group goes the other way, and you know, in typical Jim Butcher fashion, you have two stories going on at the same time. You know, you have this big political thing going on where people are meeting at the Olympian Spire. You know, there's a big conference of leaders that are going here, but then you also have something's going on the ground. And as we knew from the first book, you know, you have the Silk Weavers had somehow infiltrated deeper into the spires than they normally could get. Well, here we actually get our first taste of the ground and how dangerous it is and how crazy. Jim writes creatures amazing. All I'm going to say is giant praying mantis.
Fuck.
Okay, that's all you need to know. Okay, it's going to be epic, guys. If you haven't read it yet, it's going to be great. You're gonna like this. But a big part of this, and I don't know I think it has something to do with, because Jim put out a novella, The Warrior Born. I think it's already out. I haven't read it yet, but I will get to it. But there was a lot of dueling, a lot of talking about dueling, a lot of actual dueling in this book. And I'm not like, I mean, I don't feel like it was super integral to what the plots were going on, but nevertheless, they were great. And some of my favorite parts, nobody writes one-on-one combat quite as well as Jim Butcher. You know, in my books, I take a lot of cues from him, and a lot of people will say that that's probably my strong suit, but I think he does it the best. And that's all in full display here. So if you are in it for the action, I will say he kind of cooled down a little bit. Not there is some in here, but he's cooled down on the ship to ship combat. Not quite as heavy as the first one. This is more dueling, hand to hand combat. A lot of secret espionage. But you have oh my gosh, I'm trying to remember Mrs. Cavish. She is epically evil, man. Like some of the stuff that she does to people, very, very clever in the way that Jim is using this ethereal power. He's finding new ways to make this power interesting in this book from what we've seen in the past. We already know some of the tricks that she'll pull, but here, you know, it gets even deeper, and we get to learn more, you know, about it. You know, it's basically like steampunk wizards. You know, if you've read the first book, you would kind of get that, but you get even more of that here. Of course, you have, you know, one thing I would have liked, not that she's not in it, but Folly. I would have liked more Folly because she's hilarious. But Raoul gets a huge bump up in this, and there's more cat tribes, right? We could always use more cat tribes in the Cinder Spires. They are amazing. Raoul is probably in my top 20 characters of all time now through just 2 books. But we see the evolution of Bridget here. Her character has a lot of growth in this, and of course Gwen's being Gwen, trying to just you know, manhandle everybody, and just be super aggressive at all times. Maybe or maybe won't backfire on her. I you know, can't quite say. But Grimm, as always, is a badass. He is also quickly becoming one of my favorite characters. There's a lot more romance in this book than there was in the first one. Yeah, multiple characters, you know, So yeah, I guess Jim is trying to flex his romance muscles. It's all done well. No, nothing bad to say here. But I'm just like, if you guys liked the first book at all, this book is going to, take everything up a notch. And the only bad thing is we're probably going to have to wait 2 years because I think he's probably going to alternate back and forth between the Dresden Files, which is cool because I'm down for more Dresden Files. But let me all know, like, are you already in to the Cinder Spires series? Has this been on your radar? Is this one of your top picks? How do you feel about this book and the series in general? Since I'm not giving spoilers, we can talk about it in the comments. But if you like this content, make sure you like, subscribe, check out my Patreon if you want to support my writing and the channel. And remember, be more than human.